Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Let's try that again. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's wonderful to be together this morning. I'm the Reverend William Levwood, affectionately known as Rev Lev. My pronouns are he and him. So happy to be with you this morning. If you're here in person, we remind you to please silence your phones. And whether you're joining us in person or online, I just saw Al is here with us. It's wonderful to have you with us this morning, Al, rather than online, in person. So regardless of whether you're joining us online or in person, let's center ourselves for worship by taking a deep breath together. We open and welcome to the ancestral people of this land, acknowledging that our church, like all of Burke, rests on the unceded territory of the Manahoac tribe of the Great Sioux Nation. We seek healing and the realization of justice with the people of this land, who live on in their descendants, the present-day members of the Monacan Indian Nation, the Patawomic Indian Tribe of Virginia, and the Piscataway Indian Nation. We honor the ancestors as we move toward healing so that all together shall one day know full justice.
Welcome to Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church. I am Jen Carlson. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm happy to be your worship associate today. This congregation is a welcoming and inclusive spiritual home where we inspire each other to live our values. Together we care in community, grow in spirit, and act for justice. Whether you're a longtime member or a newcomer, or something in between, we are so delighted that you decided to join us today. Welcome.
So in a moment, I'm going to invite you to rise in body and spirit to join in our chalice lighting words, which are from our new proposed UU values. But you'll also find these bookmarks in your hymnals, so you can use these. The words will also be on the screen, but if you read like the top red line, help everyone flourish, and then flip it over by building accessible and inclusive communities, and then flip it back, honor the web of life, and then flip it over, right? These are designed to show you initially the essence of the value, and then what we're called to do. That's the flipping to the other side part. All right, so, or you can just watch and follow on the screen as well. So please rise now in body or in spirit and join in reciting our chalice lighting words. And this first screen is not on your bookmarks at all. So, together, love is at the center of Unitarian Universalism. Love is the practice of our living tradition. As Unitarian Universalists, we covenant to help everyone flourish by building accessible and inclusive communities, honor the web of life by protecting earth and all beings, be beloved community by dismantling racism and all oppressions, cultivate generosity by sharing our faith, presence, and resources, celebrate diversity by embracing our differences with love and respect, transform the world with love by growing together spiritually and ethically. So we've been studying these new UU values all year, and we're coming towards the end of that. This month we're going to study pluralism, and that's the last of our new 6 UU values that we're going to study this year. And then there's going to be a vote at our denomination's annual General Assembly. And if 2/3 of the delegates at that assembly vote to approve this change, then these will become our new values. It's pretty amazing, just to name, it's pretty amazing that we as a religious tradition revisit our core values regularly. It's in our denominational bylaws to look at those values every 15 years and just ask, is this right? Is this what we want? And it's been 40 years since we made a significant change to them. So the last time we did that, we said, yeah, we're good. But this time, there's a lot of momentum towards updating these to more, in particular, more contemporary language. So we're going to move into this month talking about pluralism, except we're not quite yet. And we already did. Yeah, so last week we had a service that focused on Passover, and we had people share, particularly Jewish UUs who have a Jewish background, about the importance of Judaism and Passover in their spiritual lives. So that was moving us into pluralism, into how we come from diverse cultures, we have diverse experiences, we have diverse theologies. This is really a distinctive and defining feature of who we are as Unitarian Universalists. So we started that exploration last week, and we're going to continue it next week. But this week, we're going to go back to exploring generosity. And we're doing that for a couple reasons. One is because we're in the middle of our pledge drive. So it's a good time to explore generosity. Another reason is because I think that generosity is so core. It's really the value that's the most new in these values from what we've had in the past. And it's really, I feel like it is the expression of what we often feel are our core. So we currently have 7 principles, and I'm pretty sure most of you couldn't recite all 7. But you probably know the first and the 7th. The first that calls us to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people. And the 7th, which calls us to respect the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. So I think when you put those together, this call for every being to flourish and to thrive, and this call for attention to the whole web and all the interconnections, and then you realize that we don't actually exist as separate individuals, but we form and are formed by each other, then the natural expression of that honoring of the sacredness of every being and the interdependence that gives us our being and our life and our thriving, the natural expression of that is generosity. Is to then reach out in generosity, not even out of some kind of altruism or self-sacrifice, but because once you realize that we're so interdependent that the only way we can all thrive and flourish is when every one of us is thriving and flourishing, then generosity, giving to others is giving to yourself, receiving from others is giving back to them. It all becomes of a piece.
Good morning. Good morning. So today we will be reading The More You Give by Marcy Campbell and Francesca Sana. The More You Give is a picture book about the legacy of love that comes when we nurture living things, be they people or trees. The More You Give by Marcy Campbell and Francesca Sana. Once there was a wide open field and a boy who loved his grandmother, who loved him back, and they were happy. The grandmother gave the boy many gifts, like big hugs and bigger laughter, and the very biggest Sunday morning pancakes. But she had more to give, small gifts like acorns, tiny and shiny with wild and woolly caps. Most of the gifts she gave to the boy were ones that he could not hold in his hands, like all of her wisdom about how things grow. The boy watched and wondered until one day, "Oh, when will it be bigger than me?" he asked as he dreamed of swings and secret spaces. In reply, his grandmother gave him another gift, patience. The boy had a birthday, and the tree reached his knees. The boy had a birthday,
and the tree reached his shoulders. The boy's grandmother had a birthday, and he gave her many gifts, like a poem, a picture, a crown, and most of all, his love. And she loved him back, and they were happy. Until one day, slowly, slowly, happiness spread its roots again. The boy's grandmother had taught him to ask for help when he needed it. And so, remembering, he did. He watered and weeded while he watched and wondered. He grew tall with wondering, still dreaming of swings and secret spaces, but not for himself. Once there was a not so wide open field and a girl who loved her father, who loved her back, and they were happy. The father gave the girl many gifts, like piggyback rides and plump strawberries and bedtime stories about his grandmother. He also gave the girl acorns, tiny, shiny things with wild and woolly caps. But he had more to give, like all of his wisdom about how things grow. When will it be bigger than me? The girl asked. And he explained how love, even when given to the smallest of things, can spread up and out and grow bigger than she could ever imagine. Together, they watered and weeded, and in time, they found shade, a home, and strong, thick branches that were perfect for. Oh, they watched and waited and wondered. The girl grew, and the trees grew, and their love grew and spread up and out, while the girl dreamt of secret spaces, but not for herself. Once there was a field dotted with trees, and a boy who loved his mother, who loved him back, and they were happy. The boy's mother gave him pancakes made from her great-grandmother's recipe, topped with strawberries from her father's patch, and hugs and laughter and piggyback rides and bedtime stories about their family and its love of green, growing things. The boy's mother gave him acorns, and together they planted and watered and weeded and watched and wondered. From their secret space, which wasn't very secret, the boy and his mother shared their wisdom with anyone and everyone about how things grow like trees and people and kindness. The boy always had more love to give, and he got love in return. Was it bigger than him? It was. It was much bigger than he had ever imagined, and that is why he was happy. Once there was a forest. So this book is especially endearing to me because I had a grandmother that shared with me the legacy of love. I called her Mama Cat. Her name was Catherine. She shared with me her love of nature and all things living, especially the beach, the birds, and gardening. She taught me how to laugh about silly things, how to bake cookies, and how to get up in the middle of the night for a fun midnight snack just because we could. Nice. Yes, and my heart still aches to spend time with her.
So those love legacy givers can be grandparents or parents or aunts or uncles or friends or volunteers in a congregation. So we said we're going to honor the Flanagans after the service, but we're going to honor them right now as well. So Judy Usherson and Mary Rose are going to share some words.
Prepare to move to Pittsburgh. We just want to let you know how much you have meant to this church community over the many years you've been here. Joanne taught RE for many years and served on the pastoral care team for over 10 years. Paul also taught RE and did lots of work with the homeless shelter, the hypothermia shelter. And Joanne served on the board and chaired RE and social justice committees and took part in numerous search teams. But more recently, Joanne started a flower ministry at AAUC, coordinating contributions of flowers for Sunday services for many years. And during COVID, when services were online, she provided photographs of the beautiful flowers that she gathered from the native garden and sometimes from her home. And these were really uplifting for all of us during those hard times. She also helped revitalize the nearly native garden, and anybody can go out there and take a look at it later, as Judy and Anna Maria will attest. Joanne and Paul and other members of the garden group spent many hours working on the garden, rooting out invasives and planting native plants to help our environment. And I personally have fond memories of the many wonderful allergy-free dinners that Joanne and Paul hosted for the auction. So, dear friends, you will be missed.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, when Richard and I joined this congregation in 2010, there was a newsletter article posted about needing some help with the garden, and I signed up, only to find that the garden group consisted of 2 old ladies and me. It was hard getting others to help, and subsequently the 2 other ladies had health issues that prevented them from doing more work, and I couldn't do it because my husband had a stroke and subsequently passed. Then Joanne stepped up. Joanne, you recruited several people to help with the garden. You inventoried and documented all of the plantings and developed a plan for segueing the garden back to its original intent as a native garden. You really stuck to honoring our principle of, respecting the interdependent web of all life. And not only did you do all of that, you also recruited your successor in Christina Watts, who is an accomplished naturalist. So you and Paul both have made huge contributions to this congregation, and we are eternally grateful, and we wish you all the best as you move on to be closer to your family. I also have wishes that we'd like to share from Christina and Anne-Marie Viveros Long, who have been very involved in the garden. This is from Christina. Joanne has been an inspiration over the many years that I've been at AAUC. Her passion and ability to engage others is remarkable, and I'm very appreciative of how organized she is. We will continue to work to improve the garden and be thinking of her often. In her honor, Christina has left native plants on the table in the gazebo that people can take if you wish, and these are from the native garden as we continue to work it over, and also from her home. So that's from Christina. And from Anna Maria, who opened the doors at AAUC? It was Joanne. Who welcomed me to express my love for poetry? It was Joanne. Who listened to me when Isabel, our eldest granddaughter, was diagnosed with dyslexia? It was Joanne. Who motivated and encouraged me to use my gardening skills? It was Joanne. We will miss your grace, your wisdom, your knowledge, your compassion, and your indefatigable energy.
We were just going to have one person speak, but then the emails just kept coming in. And I'm sure if we passed this mic around, we'd hear even more, but we just don't have time for all that. So you can please share with the Flanagans after church all your appreciations. Let the love continue, and there will be cake. So I want to bring us back to the story that was shared earlier and how it follows 3 generations in a family. Begins with a grandmother and a grandson, That grandson becomes a father, and then his daughter becomes a mother. The story begins with a wide open field, and then we see a very small sapling, and then a tree that reaches the boy's knees, and then his shoulders. And then we see the boy sitting beneath the tree, a tree that shelters him from the rain as he grieves the loss of his grandmother. Then, as we move through the generations, we see maybe a dozen saplings joining that first tree. At some point, we learn that there's a strawberry patch, and eventually a whole forest of trees. Now, some of you might remember way back in November when we first looked at the proposed new UU value of generosity, that we explored the story of the giving tree. You might remember that I suggested that perhaps it should have been called the greedy boy instead of the giving tree. And that I wrote an alternate ending for it in which the boy's daughter planted an orchard from an errant apple seed she found from that giving tree. And I have to say, I can't help but see this book as also being in conversation with the giving tree. Did anybody else see that? I didn't see it actually until like the fourth or fifth time I read it. The moment when that really became clear to me is when the boy is shown as a father beneath the tree with his daughter, and the story tells us how father and daughter together watered and weeded and in time found shade, a home, and strong, thick branches that were perfect for, and there's ... and you just have the words, oh, and you see the swing set hanging from those branches. Anybody remember what the branches were for in the giving tree? They were cut off the tree so that the boy could make himself a home. But here, the tree is described as a home, as a shelter offering shade, and the branches, they're perfect for supporting a swing. Now, the boy had dreamed of a swing way back when he was a child and had first planted the seed his grandmother gave him, but we never see any swing for him as a child, just the hope for that swing. We're told that he grew tall with wondering, still dreaming of swings, but not for himself. Again, what a contrast between the giving tree and this story. He's dreaming of that thing he longs for, but now not for himself. And just as his grandmother did, the boy gives his daughter acorns, tiny, shiny things with wild and woolly caps. And then later in the story, we watch as the daughter, now a mother, gives acorns to her son. Acorns are a gift we can hold in our hands. These kinds of gifts, the ones we can hold in our hands, are important. Our proposed value of generosity calls us to covenant to freely and compassionately share our resources. All those gifts we can hold in our hands. And we're asking each other to freely and compassionately share our resources right now through our pledge drive. I feel it's important that our covenant calls us to share these resources freely and compassionately. That underlines or highlights that they aren't just for us, that we dream of the swings of the future. That we're planting acorns, tiny, shiny things with wild and woolly caps for next year. And ultimately, we're planting acorns not just for next year, but for the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. Planting acorns for the generations to come so they will have branches. Branches to hold swings, and branches to provide shade from the sun and shelter in the rain. Freely and compassionately, we share our resources because we know, as one of our hymns puts it, we are not our own. Just as trees flourish in forests, humans flourish in community. Did you know that trees make a habitat that is conducive for the flourishing of trees? That it's forests that pull water from the coast so that clouds form and rain falls in the interiors of every continent on our earth? That in a forest, trees absorb water through their roots and cool surroundings by releasing water vapor into the air through their leaves. This moisture cools the forest floor by as much as 20 degrees on a hot summer day, conserving the moisture trees need for their flourishing. Do you see what I'm getting at? The trees, together as a community of trees, create the conditions so that more trees can grow and thrive and that flourish. Just as trees flourish in forests, humans flourish in communities. We freely and compassionately share our financial resources through our pledge drive out of enlightened self-interest. Because as individuals, we know that we thrive best in community, so when we have more, we give more. When we have more, we give more because we know that giving will come back to support us, that community does for humans what forests do for trees. Metaphorically, we pull water from our roots and release it through our leaves. And that's how we make a burning world into a verdant home where we're sheltered from the fiery furnaces of life. We need the gifts we can hold in our hands. We need to share those with each other. And also, our story tells us that most of the gifts the grandmother gave to the boy were ones that he could not hold in his hands. And it turns out these are the most important gifts, the ones we cannot hold in our hands. The grandmother gives hugs and laughter and Sunday morning pancakes. The father gives piggyback rides and plump strawberries and bedtime stories about his grandmother. Then the mother gives pancakes from her great-grandmother's recipe, topped with strawberries from her father's strawberry patch, along with the hugs and the laughter and the piggyback rides and the bedtime stories. In each generation, we're told there was a child who loved a caregiver who loved them back. This love is the gift that we cannot hold in our hands. Our UU value of generosity calls us to freely and compassionately share our resources with each other, and it also calls us to freely and compassionately share our presence with each other. Attention is, after all, love, as the poet Marge Piercy writes. What we must give children, mothers, fathers, pets, our friends, the news, the woes of others. In each generation, we're told there was a child who loved a caregiver who loved them back. And we're told they were happy. Loving each other brings us happiness. I would argue that it's the only thing that truly does that. Love, that gift we cannot hold in our hands. Most of the gifts the grandmother gave to the boy were ones that he could not hold in his hands, like all of her wisdom about how things grow. In each generation in our story, after planting an acorn, those tiniest, shiniest gifts with their wild woolly caps, the child asks, "When will it be bigger than me?" The The grandmother responded with the gift of patience. The father explained how love, even when given to the smallest things, can spread up and out and grow bigger than his daughter could ever imagine. And by the third generation, both mother and son were sharing their wisdom with anyone and everyone about how things grow like trees and people and kindness. We are called to share our resources freely and compassionately with each other, nurturing human community and the earth from generation to generation. We are called to share our presence with each other as an act of love, love that lives on even after we are gone, love that teaches us to ask for help when we need it. Because from you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. Near the very end of the story, we're told the boy always had more love to give, and he got love in return. Was it bigger than him? It was. It was much bigger than he had ever imagined, and that is why he was happy. We share our loving presence with each other, and the love grows and grows. It grows much bigger than us, much bigger than we can even imagine. And this is what makes us happy. But we are called to share more than our presence and our resources. Our UU value of generosity calls us to share our faith. Our Unitarian Universalist faith freely and compassionately with the world, sharing our wisdom with anyone and everyone about how things grow like trees and people and kindness. Now, I know many of us are reticent to share our Unitarian Universalist faith with others, and we feel we have good reason to be wary of sharing faith with others. For many of us, have had too much experience with another faith that told us that we need to save others from themselves. As Unitarian Universalists, we reject the idea that we or anyone else holds a monopoly on truth. That's the pluralism part of this sermon. We reject the idea that we or anyone else holds a monopoly on truth. We also reject the idea that there is a finite amount of love and a finite amount of resources. We reject the forces that believe in this limited love, which some falsely call God, this limited love which condemns some people to an eternal hellfire of torture. We reject also the forces that create a world where a few people have much, which they hoard, so there are many who have not even enough resources to flourish, not even enough sometimes to survive. We reject these images of limitation, and instead we draw the circle wide, and then we draw it wider still. We proclaim that no one stands alone. We know how love, even when given to the smallest of things, can spread up and out, growing bigger than we could ever imagine. This, my friends, is a powerful message. It's a message that needs to be shared. There are so many who need to hear this message and know there is a community like ours committed to living out the calling that it calls us to. Too many people grew up being told they were going to hell. Too many children are still told that. Too many people grew up in poverty, in a hell on earth. Too many children continue to live through this hellfire of poverty. Too many adults and too many to early deaths from this hellfire of poverty. We need to spread a different message. We need to gather up the nourishing waters from the roots of our Unitarian Universalist faith and share this water through our leaves so that it can cool the fires of hell, so that it can make the conditions of a forest of community where all people can thrive and flourish. My friends, people need Unitarian Universalism. We are called to share our wisdom with anyone and everyone about how things grow, like trees and people, and maybe most importantly, kindness. We are called to share our resources, those tiny, shiny acorns with their wild and woolly caps, so those resources can grow bigger, can become a flourishing forest. We are called to share our loving presence, our hugs and laughter and piggyback rides and bedtime stories, so that the love lives on even after we're gone, passed on from generation to generation. And we are called to share our Unitarian Universalist faith, to share it, to offer it, our wisdom about how love grows when we draw the circle wide and then draw it wider still. Because the world needs that wisdom, and we need the gifts of the people who haven't yet found us. More gifts than we could ever hold in our hands. So may we draw the circle wide, and may we draw it wider still. May it be so, and may we be among those who make it so. Amen, 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 and blessed be.